everyone, it's Julie at Polynesian Plumeria, and today's the day we are going to take the seedlings out of the aero garden and transition them into soil. We're going to pot them up. So I want to start with, how do you know that it's time? These guys probably could stay in another week or so because they're not as tall as some that I've pulled out at 8 weeks before. But you know, it all depends on the variety, right? Even though each one is a unique plant, they all are still, they came from the same mother plant, right? So I've had some that were probably this tall when I pulled them out at 8 weeks. And these are a little bit shorter, but remember I told you last week and the week before, they have got more multi-tips. They have really branched out and gotten really bushy. So they're starting to prevent some of the lower leaves from getting any type of sunlight from the grow lights. So first thing I do when I do this, first of all, let's talk about the distraction in the room, right? Look at that beautiful bloom. This is banana split that started blooming a couple of days ago. Look how large it is. I measured it. It's between 5.5 to 6 inches, and this is its first time blooming. It's only about, I don't know, I think about this tall. I bought it last summer. But isn't it gorgeous? And it smells like a sweet, really ripe banana to me. It's like, it smells heavenly. So going back to what we were talking about, because remember, we do all of this for the bloom, right? And that's why I gave you tips. More tips, more blooms. So next thing I want to tell you before I even start pulling them out, I'm only going to do one for demonstration purposes, is you've got to make sure that you use the right potting mix, because we are moving them from water, they've been grown in water, and they're going into soil. So these water-grown roots have to transition into soil-grown roots, which is pretty easy to do if you follow the right protocol, because Plumeria are very capable of producing new soil-adapted roots. But there's some very important things you need to do, and one is you need to use a light, well-draining mix. You want plenty of air, oxygen around the roots, because they had oxygen, believe it or not, even though they were grown in water. Someone else asked me this before. Because when that pump runs 5 minutes of every hour, it's producing oxygen. Okay, the bubbles, that's oxygen going straight to the roots. So the roots still need oxygen. If you had them planted in a soil that was very dense, then they wouldn't have any oxygen to access. So this is what I use. I use 2 different types. Over the years, I've used 2 different ways, but this is my newest way. So I like to use my well-draining potting soil, which in this case, I'm using the Ocean Forest from Fox Farm. And you can see, look how light and airy it is. It's already got a lot of perlite in it. It's even, look at that, it's even already got the pine fines, I call them, because whenever the pine bark is that tiny, I call it pine fines, or the maker of the product calls it pine fines. And then we've got the perlite, and then we've got more pine fines, because that doesn't have as much as I would like. Now, what do I normally do? I usually do about 60 to 70% of the well-draining potting mix, and you don't have to use Ocean Forest. You can use a cactus or citrus type base soil that's really well-draining. And then I use somewhere between, I like to use about 15% more of the perlite and 15% more of the pine fines. Now let's talk about the pine fines. You see how tiny these pieces are? These are even smaller than the mini pine bark. Mini pine bark is what I used in my Plumeria pots that are already mature and have soil-grown roots. These are the ones that I use whenever I'm doing seedlings, because the seedlings' roots are so fragile and so tender that some will break off when I pull them out, and some will break off as I'm potting it up. But you still want to prevent as much of that as possible, because you don't want them all to break off. So going back to why I use this mix, this provides texture, and so that the roots are not covered so tightly with the soil that they can't breathe. So this creates pockets of air for them to get oxygen. I'm going to move this to the side. And we are going to pull out our first one. As you can see, I've already labeled the pot. I used a white paint marker, so don't wipe on this whenever it's wet because it'll come off. But it's a potpourri seedling. Today's date is August 16th, 2026. As it grows and gets bigger, I will use my color-coded tags that I keep the legend in my phone and on my computer, so I know which color represents what mother plant that the seedling came from, but they're not big enough yet to use these. So I'm going to start with this one. Oh, by the way, I lifted the lights before we started the video, because when I go to lift up, I don't want any damage to the leaves, so make sure you lift your light as far up as possible. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Let's see what these roots look like. And remember, don't freak out if some of the roots break off. It's okay. They're still going to make it. Look at that. Nice. And look how many tips she has. I wonder if I can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I think, and then the main stem. This is a 10 tip tree, and it's only 8 weeks old. Wow, that's a beauty. So now, some of you have already asked me about this. Can you just slide the basket off, or do you have to cut it off? Well, let's see. So I'll go and start. This one I think I'm going to be able to slide off just because I've been doing this so long and I'm looking at the roots and they're not as big as some that I've grown before at 8 weeks. So when I start gently sliding it down, if I can get it to come down and just some like little baby, really thin, tiny roots come off, then I keep going. If for some reason I get stuck because one of the bigger roots just won't make it through the basket holes, then I stop and I cut it off. But see, I only lost that many roots. That's not bad at all. That's why it was fine to just slide this one down. But if you have to, you use your scissors and you cut that basket off if you think it's going to compromise some of the thicker, bigger roots, or it's just going to take too many roots. But no, not in this case. So I've already filled this pot up with my mix. And then I'm just going to set this here and see how far down it needs to go. I want the top of that sponge right below the surface of the black nursery pot because you know they love the heat of these black nursery pots, so that's why I always use them. So this one is just about right. So some of you may be wondering, well, aren't you going to put some rooting hormone on those roots, or some mycorrhizae, the great white shark that you like to use, or some type of fertilizer? Absolutely not. We are using no fertilizer, no rooting hormone, no mycorrhizae, no nothing. Why? Because these roots are sensitive and they don't need that extra stress. We don't want to burn them. So we're just being as gentle and fragile, or gentle with them as possible because they're fragile. So now I'm going to backfill this. I just kind of lay the roots around like that, where you just saw they were kind of just sitting on top of the soil. And you know, if you want to dig them deeper so that they're more straight, that's fine. But this is what I've done every single time for years now and had great success. And then I'm just going to use more of that same mix, and I'm going to backfill it. Yes, I'm making a mess on my table, but that's why this is my garden house. It's full of dirt. I had to clean up a big mess right before we started this video because I had some sweet potato leaves in a garbage bag that leaked, which didn't make any sense. I'm like, I guess the garbage bag broke down. So I keep going till I know that sponge is covered. Oh, I know the one thing I forgot to get when I was setting up the video was my stakes. I can do that when we go outside, when I show you where we're going to set them while they acclimate outdoors. So this one's standing up pretty nice on its own, but I'm still probably going to stake it. Just in case, like we get a heavy wind coming or something like that. So once it's potted up, I want you to know that if you notice, I wasn't like really packing it tight, like really pressing down hard. I mean, I was packing it, but I wasn't pressing hard like you would with some plants. And the reason why is because you want those roots surrounded by air. They need oxygen. Remember, I've already said that a couple of times. So now I'm going to use my rainwater because I think rainwater is the best. So I went out to my rain barrel and filled this up with some rainwater. And I'm going to water the soil around the roots. But I'm not going to water again until that top part starts to dry out. And let me explain why. Some of you are probably like, what? I mean only like a couple days in between watering, and this is why. We're trying to wean them off water. And if I keep giving them a ton of water, whenever I'm transitioning them into soil, they are going to keep remaining or wanting to remain a water root, which won't work in the soil, right? We're trying to get them to transition off. So it's just like a baby, right? When you're trying to wean a baby from something, you don't keep giving that to the baby. So I look at them as babies. I'm trying to wean them off. Now, they still need water. We all know that plants that are in soil need water. We just don't want them to be doused or soaked or just dripping wet. So there's a delicate balance, and you just have to pay attention to them and know that when this starts to dry out on the top, it's time to water again. And of course, when I give them the water, it's going to make the soil kind of loosen up around it, so I just pat it down again. So now we're going to go outside. I'm going to show you the special area where I keep them purposely because I don't want to take them out into full sun. Even though they were under these grow lights, this is still not full sun. And this is a climate controlled building they were in. During the day, I kept it at like 74 degrees, and at night it was 78. They're going out into, I don't know what the temperature is right now, honey. What is it? Like 90s?
Yeah, we're mid 90s, real feel well over 100.
Yeah, so especially this time of year, we don't want to do that to them. They do need to stay warm, but they need to be in bright filtered light. And then after 2 weeks, I'll start moving them out. But let's pause and go outside and let me show you where I keep them. So this is the area outside where I like to keep my seedlings as I'm helping them adjust slowly to being in full sun. And we're under our lean-to area where I do a lot of my potting and just different things that I do with my plumeria and all my other plants. And so basically it's protected from rain because that way I can still control the moisture. We're in rainy season and I don't want them to get soaking wet every day because again, we're weaning them off water. They need water, but not soaked in water so that those roots will adjust from being grown in water to now being grown in soil. So the one thing that I didn't do on the inside was I did not stake it. So I'm going to stake it now. Be really careful not to drive the stake down into that sponge because you noticed I planted them still within the sponge. The roots are still inside the sponge and there's nothing wrong with that. That sponge is a growing medium and it will just break down over time when it's in the soil. I don't think I cut this long enough. There we go. So she's staked. And I already told you that I labeled her. And I like these trays, these 1 gallon trays that we get for free at, I think it's Home Depot that has these out in the front of the store by the registers, the garden center registers. And I just grab them every time I'm there. So that way I'm gonna have eventually 36 of these out here right on this table. And I can just pick them up when it's time to start gradually moving them into full sun. They'll stay here for 2 weeks because they're getting bright, indirect light. They're not getting any fertilizer. And then probably in a month or two, depends on how they're doing, I'll assess it then. I only give them liquid fertilizer. Remember, that's what they were on in the water. They were on liquid fertilizer. So I don't want to give them a granular right now. I don't want to give them anything that's going to be too strong for them. So a very condensed version of a liquid fertilizer, like I would cut it with water more than you normally would. And that's what I'm going to give them like a month out, at least a month out. Sometimes it's 2 months out, but it just depending on how well they're doing. And that's it. I'm going to go inside now and do the other, 17, because the other 2 arrow gardens aren't coming out yet. I'll do those right before we leave on vacation. And that's how you do it. It's pretty simple, right? So I hope all of you are having fun out in your garden this weekend and you're planting and smelling flowers and finding seed pods. We found some more today. But remember to follow me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I just posted a new TikTok video, which I thought was pretty funny. If you haven't been there yet, it's really easy to get on and watch. It's free and all of that other stuff. But I really have fun with those creative videos, me and my husband and my daughter. So have a great day, everyone. See you soon.